Hello, folks. You are listening to the Deal by Me podcast. This is where we ask guests to tell us your story. Your story can be uh, encouraging, inspiring, and very transforming. Uh, Today we have with us an artist, an author, Dave Letterfly Knoderer. And I'm going to let him pronounce that last name correctly when we begin. And he is not only the guru of living an interesting life, but is also an inspirational speaker, ready to take you behind the scenes of the fascinating places discovered along the road of his life. Good to have Dave with us this today. Dave, thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of our podcast today. Would you tell listeners a little bit about yourself, where you're located, and anything you want to tell us about you? You have a fascinating story. This traveling artist, I know you got a lot to say today.
Thank you, James. Yes, I certainly do. And my name is Dave Letterfly Knoderer. I have been blessed with a last name that you cannot pronounce, remember, or spell. So we don't even need to worry about that. Just call me Dave Letterfly. That's the brush name that I adopted when I started my creative career as a sign painter and a lettering man and a pictorial artist and a pinstripe artist and everything else. Everybody just calls me Letterfly. I grew up in the Midwest and I became fascinated with creation, making things. I've always been on in regards to engaged making something when I was just a little kid. So I suppose it was just a logical course of action for me to not only want to be ongoingly creative, but especially to launch myself into an interesting way of being creative. As a teenager, even before high school was over with, I joined the circus and I played the drums in the circus band. And that introduced me to a fascinating way of combining creativity and especially travel with a unique culture that was all about entertainment to enlighten the audience. So I think that the entertainment background that I was introduced to as a teenager, uh, uh, along with accumulating the hospitality mindset, put me in a kind of a unique position as an artist whenever it came time to create my own special way of being of service to my following. And as you're probably already aware, the computer has taken away an awful lot of what used to be all completely done by hand. And what I ended up becoming very, very fortunate with as my career evolved was I would find another niche that I could serve, continuing to do things by hand with paint. And today I am blessed with a route of Harley Davidson stores that use me as an added attraction at their store once a year. And I create little hand painted, intricate pinstripe designs and images of all kinds and inscriptions and custom logos and everything you can think of to enhance the appearance of the motorcycle and heighten pride in ownership for the Harley Davidson community. And it's been quite a wonderful niche. And I especially like having the ability to travel. I'm south in the wintertime. I'm here at my home in Florida right now. And in the summertime, when it gets awful hot in Florida, I'm up north because am actually a Midwestern boy. And so I like being up north in the summertime. In the summertime, I'm between Philadelphia and Chicago at a different Harley Davidson store every week.
Dave Letterfly. I like that. Dave Letterfly. Uh, I was looking at your bio, and one of the things you say is have brush will travel. Is that what you meant when you're talking about you don't stay at one place? You know, you especially in the wintertime, you at this place, summertime, you at this place. Is that what you mean when you say have brush will travel?
Yeah, pretty much. What I discovered in the service business, that's essentially what I am in as a creative artist. In the service business, there are a lot of times where I'm just like the fire department. When we get a call to action, it's time to get up and go in order to be of service to my customer. And with combining the regular route that I have, up north in the summer, down south in the wintertime, the travel is a great big part of the experience. And that's where the have brush will travel. It's sort of like a reminder of remember the old old Western movies where it was have gun will travel or something. Sort of that kind of a
Okay.
thing. And it gets the message across.
I get you. I get you. I get you. How did this all start for you? Your creativity. Uh, when did feel that within yourself?
Well, when I was a little kid, I was big enough to see out of the car when we were driving around. I noticed the little pinstripe designs on the other cars, and I had the idea, hey, I could do that. And when I got home, I started to decorate my wagon and my bicycle. And the next thing I knew, the other kids in the neighborhood were noticing what I was doing, and they were talking me into doing something for them. And I'd go, well, yeah, I could do that for you. And then the whole time I'd be painting for them, I'd be thinking, why don't they just do it themselves?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I
Excited.
I came home from kindergarten one day, and my mother said, "What'd you do in school today?" And I handed her a paper, and I said, "Well, the teacher made us paint something." And there it was. It was just an absolutely beautiful painting. My mother was amazed. It didn't occur to me that I was different from anybody else. And so it all started there. My mother started encouraging me. She was, mom and dad were both probably creative and in the arts. My mother was an opera singer. My dad was actually a draftsman during World War II, illustrating flight manuals. So I got my, I guess I got my tendency for creativity, honestly.
Okay. Okay. So you really kind of seen yourself as being an artist for most of your life.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Now I was also looking at something in your bio, and I want to just ask you about this. How did learning circus, horsemanship, influence you for the rest of your life? Curious about that.
Okay, well, there's a little backstory to that because when I was a little kid, see, I have an older brother who was physically challenged. He was awkward and clumsy, and he produced bizarre behavior. So he was a target for all the kids when we were going to school. They would pick on him and stuff. So as a little kid, I figured out that I was going to be better off if I did things myself. So I pretty much withdrew from society and became creative. And then it was on the circus where I was around the people who interacted with animals that displayed loving, ongoing, nurturing behavior. And I was attracted to that. And I started to learn from the men and women that that enrolled animals to do these incredible feats performing with the circus. And I became fascinated with animal training. And whenever I entered into learning from one of the old timers how to go about the training of a pony act of my very own, I ended up learning what I call Relationship 101, a functional, loving way to connect with another living being. So how did it influence me my whole life? I think that it gave me a leg up on loving, functional, proactive behavior, encouraging behavior.
Mm. This is a really interesting interview for me. I've never had the opportunity to interview an artist who is doing that as a living, and so to talk with you today is very interesting and exciting. So I want to just ask you a couple more questions here, and that is, what was the most tragic point, in your life? I would consider or talk about a turning point that revealed even greater calling as a creative part of your being. What can you say about that?
What can I? So I can say plenty about that.
Okay.
Part of my story includes alcoholism and hitting a bottom, which occurred 35 years ago, and which, as many of you may know, a bottom is like a devastating bankrupt condition, which forced me to look at my way of going and discard a lot of the old beliefs and systems that I had been using for the sake of survival, and adopting new upgraded belief systems, and especially embracing relationships with other people. I had been introduced to Relationship 101 through horses, with training with horses, but I had yet to enter into becoming part of the human herd, I guess you would say. And the introduction to that occurred with the recovery groups, which introduced me to myself, and then placed me on a spiritual walk that includes today a practical relationship with a divine, higher power, supreme being who I call God, and which has transformed not only my perception of the world around me, but especially my output. Today, I've been transformed from a withdrawn introvert as a child. I've been transformed into a people person, and I have a message as the result of that, going through the life experiences that I've gone through and emerged on the other side. And I have a message that I have to share with the world. And that's what started me on my path as an author.
Listening to you, not only are you a artist, but I just hear you say you also an author. So can you talk a little bit about when did writing, you're becoming an author, began this creative path for you? What was it in you that made you decide that you also wanted to write?
As you're well aware, writing is another creative avenue to go down. What happened was, it started with the recovery work, because part of what we do in the process of recovery is do written inventories of things for the sake of catharsis. And then as I moved into my creative career as an artist, I started to use the same skills that I had discovered, in a sense, to generate marketing stories for the sake of my marketing my business. And I still send out a newsletter every 2 weeks to my following, and it also gets posted on my blog page, my author blog page. And a bunch of years went by, and all of a sudden I had enough content for a book. And I met a professor at SEU who became a friend of mine, and he says, "Hey, let me look at what you got there." And it took a couple of years, but we sat down and put together a logical, themed series of the essays that I had written, and put them into a inspiring. It's actually memoir. It started as a way to honor my dad and explain where my passion comes from, because my dad had a love for the circus, and that's where my passion for the circus came from. Was from, I guess I wanted to please my dad by becoming a circus guy, even though it certainly didn't have that kind of an effect at the very beginning. But a transformation did take place between my dad and myself, which is good news, and that's part of what's in the book.
Dave, let me say this to you. I pastored for almost 32 years, retired at the end of 22, and was at the same church. And one of the things I wanted to do was start a podcast to continue my ministry. You know, you're thinking about what you're going to do once you retire. And one of the things that I wanted to do was to kind of have a podcast that will be encouraging, inspiring, and kind of transforming. You have, said a lot today that seemed to be a lot in the line of inspiring to listeners who may be listening to this podcast. So I want to ask you this question. What is it that you could say from your experiences and the events in your life that would be a benefit to someone else?
That's a great question, and it's one that I've addressed, that I'm that it's going into another book that I'm getting ready to publish. It's going to be like a guidebook, a guide for living the life of your dreams. And what I've discovered on my path to recovery was that there were a lot of things that interfered with what it was that God intended for me originally. And I accumulated these things. A lot of them were fear-based and pride-based and those kinds of things. So what I would like to say to the listening audience is there are things inside our hearts that we need to discard in order to become an empty vessel, so that we can receive instructions for finding the life that God intended for us to live originally. He created us in his image, and greater than this shall ye do. We've heard that, and it's all available. But there are a lot of us, like I was stuck at one point in my life, and there's a lot of people out there who are simply frustrated, or they're grumbling, or they don't see a way out, and all of those kinds of things. And the promise is there is a way out, and it typically requires our discovering, whether it takes a miracle or some other person in small group, or doing some research, or any number of things. It usually requires uncovering what it is that we need to get rid of, so that we can open the way for the life of our dreams to take place.
Have you been challenged from your own experiences and events in your life? Have you felt? Well, let me ask it this way: how have you dealt with challenges in your life from your basic experiences and events that you have encountered?
the response to challenges as they occur have evolved from whenever I was a little child and I was unable to think in terms of logical creating a strategy or something. My initial response was to initiate some kind of a survival technique. And then as I grew into a self-centered, self-reliant individual, I adopted another series of challenge responses. But it wasn't until the turnaround took place that was part of my finding a practical relationship with not only God, but with my thinking and with my emotions and with my behavior and all of those things, that I end up embracing the truth is that there is a spiritual remedy for any problem that occurs. And so today, my response is very different than it was when I was a child or even a young adult. So oftentimes, when a challenge occurs, the best thing for me to do is absolutely nothing, and then open up and become receptive to guidance from around me, whether it's in small group or in meditation or any number of sources. Because what I'm doing, instead of doing a knee-jerk behavior like I have been doing my whole life, is I'm opening myself up to something new in an effort to embrace a new way to be in relationship with the current challenge.
Wow. Listeners, don't go nowhere because Dave is going to still share some more good points with us. But first of all, I want to ask Dave, where can people get your book and how can they learn more about you? Your story is very interesting, and I'd like for my listeners to know where they can go to get more information on you.
Yeah, I'll be happy to tell you about that. My book is called Speedy, Hurled Through Havoc, and it's available on Amazon. Speedy was the nickname of my dad during World War II. So that became the logical name for the book. And I put a picture of my dad on his World War II era Harley Davidson motorcycle on the cover. And so Speedy, Hurled Through Havoc is available on Amazon. And I've got several more books in the works right now. The next one is going to be called Hit the Road and Thrive.
Oh, wow.
Which will be the guidebook for living an interesting life. And then the next one will be called Kinker, and that will be a memoir about a 10-year chunk of my life when I started as a teenager, and then I landed with the circus, and then the cultural as I embraced so much of that fascinating culture and became an animal trainer and all of these other things, there'll be a part of that next memoir, and it'll be called Kinker. It's still with the editor. We're still developing that one.
Oh, well said. Let me, I'd like to just comment, ask you maybe one or two more questions because I think your interview is very interesting and will be very interesting to listeners. How in heavens did you get to travel for your entire career? You know, most people don't do that. Most people can't get too many places during their lifetime. But you, it's a career for you, look like. How do you do it?
How did I go about doing it? Well, see, I was introduced to traveling when I was working with the circus. We actually did one-day stands back in those days with their traveling big top circus. It was just a fascinating way to spend. It was pretty much most of the year, and it was a pretty hectic pace. There were a couple of intervals where I would stay put for a period of time, but whenever I discovered a huge market for putting murals on the backs of motorhomes with the airbrush in the late 80s, since I knew how to travel, I was able to embrace this particular demographic that was also a traveling demographic. Those motorhomes were clumped up somewhere every week. And because I knew how to travel, I was able to stay in front of the market that bought that kind of work. I traveled solid for 9 years chasing motorhomes and became the most highly regarded artist in the RV industry, and that attracted the attention of a big RV dealership in Tampa, Florida, which they asked me to become their resident artist. So I did have an interval where that gave me the ability to have the home that I have here in Florida was my relationship with them. And then technology came along, and today they put big wraps and digital prints and stuff all over big things. So hand painted airbrushed murals is a thing of the past. And I was able to evolve once again and become a motorcycle artist. So typically I was able to embrace clientele because of my ability to travel. When I was in the custom market, I had customers in Florida in the winter, and then I had an amusement park in Chattanooga, Tennessee in the spring, and then another customer in Kansas, and I spent the summer in Michigan. And I've always becoming part of it was because I was a freelance artist, and I was passionate about interesting, fascinating projects that I would just go and find the most, and that also facilitated learning with some incredible horsemanship mentors throughout those same years, because I worked with people in Michigan and Florida and in other places, accumulating all the pieces of the puzzle for the of classic horsemanship. So travel has been a big part of my life, and it still is. I'm on the road 7 months of the year now, and I'm here at my home 5 months.
Dave, tell me this. Is there anything that you're not able to do? Is there anything?
Yes, there is one thing that I have never been able to figure out how to do, and that is to get the toothpaste back in the tube.
I love it.
Everything else I can pretty much figure out how to do.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, there you have it. Dave Letterfly, who has the uncanny ability to visualize, develop, and create images that have never been done before, along with the wide variety of styles, pen line designs, his oneness with eagles, wolves, horses, feathers, flames, military logos, and countless other icons that make up the mainstay of Dave's work. Dave, it's a pleasure and privilege to have you share with us today, and we just want to thank you so very much.